When you grip the steering wheel of a BMW E30 M3, you feel a texture that modern industry has forgotten. It is a specific frequency of vibration. Modern cars filter this out, confusing numbness with quality. But hidden deep within the architecture of this car is a secret. It is an engineering decision made in a moment of absolute panic that separates this machine from everything else on the road. We often define luxury by what is added to a car. We look for softer leather and larger screens. But the E30 M3 is defined by what was left out. The reason this car feels so different comes down to a single, controversial choice that was never meant to reach the public road. This is the story of that choice, and how a desperate deadline accidentally created a benchmark for quality that we are still chasing today. But this choice would spark a controversy that nearly derailed the entire project. And it would become the very thing that made this car legendary. Please subscribe to the channel for more stories of mechanical history. To understand this car, we have to look at the atmosphere in which it was born. The mid-1980s were a time of intense mechanical competition. On the racetracks of Europe, BMW found itself under pressure from the new Mercedes-Benz 190e. It was a wake-up call. Paul Rossi, the technical director of BMW Motorsport, received a direct order to build a car that could dominate Group A racing. But there was a catch. To make the race car legal, the company had to build and sell 5,000 road-going versions within 12 months. This was an engineering emergency. The team did not have years to develop a new platform. They had weeks. Legend says the engine concept was created in just 14 days. This rapid development reveals the true luxury of the era, the luxury of trusting experts to make difficult decisions without interference. The most controversial decision concerned the engine. By this time, BMW was famous for its smooth six-cylinder engines. The inline six was the soul of the brand. A marketing department would have insisted on keeping it for the flagship model. It would have been the safe choice. It would have been the expected choice. But Rossi and his engineers knew that a heavy six-cylinder engine would ruin the balance of the car on a racetrack. They needed something lighter. They needed an engine that could handle extreme rotational speeds without shaking itself apart. They chose physics over prestige. They rejected the smooth six-cylinder for a rougher, lighter four-cylinder unit that prioritized balance above all else. It was a rejection of the idea that more is always better. The approval process for this radical machine was equally devoid of bureaucracy. There were no endless committees or feasibility studies. Rossi simply drove a prototype to the home of the CEO, Eberhard von Kuenheim. The boss drove it, returned with a smile, and gave a simple verbal approval. He said he liked it. That was it. The project was alive. This level of direct communication between engineering and leadership is almost impossible to imagine in a modern corporation. From that moment, the division known as Motorsport GmbH began a transformation. They did not just add a body kit to a standard 3 Series. They engaged in a philosophy of total reconstruction. They viewed the standard car merely as a donor of parts. The goal was to graft high-performance necessities onto a compact sedan chassis. This approach was fundamentally different from how performance cars are built now. Today, a fast sedan is often a standard car with more power and stiffer suspension. The E30 M3 was a race car that was politely asked to wear license plates. The engineers stripped away the compromises of the mass-market vehicle. They looked at the standard 3 Series and asked what needed to change to win a championship. The answer was almost everything. This was the beginning of a process that would result in a car where the engineering reality completely overshadowed the marketing narrative. The luxury here was not in what was added, but in the integrity of what was built. It was the start of a homologation process that would force a major manufacturer to sell a piece of specialized equipment to the general public. What the CEO did not realize was that his simple approval would force the engineers to make a choice that contradicted everything BMW had stood for decades. Please subscribe to the channel for more stories of mechanical history. The term homologation special is often used loosely in the automotive world, but in the context of the BMW E30 M3, it is a legal definition that dictated the very existence of the machine. To compete in Group A racing, the rules were explicit. The manufacturer had to produce 5,000 road-legal examples of the competition car within a 12-month period. This requirement created a rare type of exclusivity. It was not the artificial scarcity of a limited edition marketing campaign. It was a scarcity born of regulation. It meant that for one brief year, the priorities of the racetrack were legally required to supersede the priorities of the showroom floor. This mandate forced the engineers to inject pure motorsport DNA into a vehicle that would be sold to the general public. When you look underneath the metal skin of the M3, you see where that exclusivity becomes tangible. The chassis was not simply a stiffened version of the standard 3 Series. It was a fundamental reimagining of the suspension geometry. The standard E30 was a capable car, but it was designed for comfort and daily usability. The M3 had to handle the extreme loads of the Nürburgring. The engineers replaced the standard front wheel hubs with heavy-duty 5-lug components. This was not an aesthetic choice to fit different wheels. It was a structural necessity to support larger brakes and stiffer wheel bearings that could survive 24-hour endurance races. They replaced soft rubber bushings with solid mounts, and altered the caster angle to push the front wheels forward. These invisible changes increased high-speed stability and gave the steering a substantial, precise weight. It communicated the texture of the road directly to the hands of the driver. Perhaps the most telling example of this philosophy was the transmission. The M3 featured a dogleg shift pattern, where first gear is moved down and to the left, outside the main H pattern. In city driving, this is inconvenient. But on a racetrack, first gear is rarely used. The priority is the shift between second and third. This placed second and third gear in a straight line, allowing the driver to snap between them instantly. For a grocery run, it was confusing. For a racetrack, it was essential. It was a tactile reminder that this machine prioritized the skilled operator over the casual user. The production of such a vehicle was a logistical nightmare. Mass production relies on uniformity, but the M3 was full of deviations. It required specific parts, specific assembly procedures, and specific attention that disrupted the efficiency of the assembly line. This friction between the need to build a daily drivable vehicle and the strict demands of the racing regulations is what gives the E30 M3 its soul. It is a car that exists in the tension between two worlds. Today, manufacturers can simulate performance with software and adaptive dampers. They can make a comfortable car feel sporty with the push of a button. But in 1986, they had to build the performance into the iron and steel itself. The exclusivity of the M3 comes from the fact that they could not hide the race car underneath. They had to let it breathe. This resulted in a machine that demanded compromise from its owner, but in return, it offered a driving experience of absolute clarity. To lift the forward-hinged hood of an E30 M3 is to look at a piece of industrial sculpture that values function over decoration. The heart of this machine, the engine known internally as the S14, is the definitive argument for the luxury of engineering. It is a power plant that traces its lineage directly to the Formula One grid, yet it resides in a compact sedan. The architecture of this engine reveals a level of resourcefulness that has largely disappeared from the automotive world. Today, engines are often shared across dozens of models to save costs, covered in plastic shrouds to hide their complexity. The S14 was built for one specific purpose, and it wears its mechanical nature openly. The story of its creation is a masterclass in problem solving. The engineers started with a humble foundation, the cast iron M10 block, which had been the basis for BMW racing engines for decades. The magic lay in the cylinder head. They physically shortened the 24-valve head from the legendary M1 supercar, removing 2 cylinders to fit the 4-cylinder block. This was not to save money, it was to save the crankshaft. A shorter shaft was stiffer, able to handle 7,000 revolutions per minute, without the torsional vibrations that plagued longer engines. Sacrificing smoothness for durability was the essence of race engineering. Perhaps the most significant engineering choice was what they chose to omit. In the mid-1980s, turbocharging was the easy path to horsepower. It was the era of the turbo in Formula One. It would have been simple to bolt a turbine to the side of the engine and chase big numbers. But the engineers resisted. They understood that a turbocharger acts as a muffler, dampening the sound. And more importantly, it creates a delay between the movement of the driver's foot and the reaction of the engine. They insisted on natural aspiration. They installed individual throttle bodies for each cylinder, a feature usually reserved for pure competition cars. This meant that when you touched the pedal, 4 separate butterflies opened instantly. The engine breathed freely, reacting with a sharpness that modern turbocharged engines, for all their power, simply cannot replicate. The character of the S14 is defined by this mechanical honesty. It does not offer the lazy, low-end torque that modern drivers are accustomed to. Below 4,000 revolutions per minute, it feels almost pedestrian. It requires the driver to be an active participant. You have to downshift. You have to chase the red line. When the engine comes onto the cam, the sound is not a synthesized noise piped through the stereo speakers. It is the genuine metallic clatter of valve gear and the induction roar of air rushing into the plenum. It is a raw, unrefined harmony that vibrates through the firewall and into the cabin. On paper, the output of roughly 200 horsepower sounds modest by today's standards. We live in an era where family sport utility vehicles produce double that figure. But numbers on a specification sheet tell a lie about the experience. The luxury here is the power-to-weight ratio. Because the car weighed only around 1,200 kilograms, or 2,600 pounds, those 200 horses felt alive. The engine did not have to drag a heavy chassis filled with sound, deadening and safety electronics. The response was immediate. This philosophy of purity stands in stark contrast to the modern approach. Today, we solve the problem of weight by adding more horsepower. We solve the problem of numbness by adding synthetic steering feel. The E30 M3 solved these problems by removing the weight and keeping the feedback intact. It offered a sensation of speed that was physical rather than digital. It was an engine that felt faster than it was because it engaged every sense the driver possessed. This powertrain was not designed to win a war of statistics in a magazine comparison. It was designed to win on the track, where the only metric that matters is the connection between the driver and the road. This dedication to functional purity did not stop at the engine bay. It dictated the very shape of the steel that surrounded it. This decision to reject the easy path of turbocharging would define not just the engine, but the entire philosophy of how this car communicated with its driver. And that communication would become something no modern car could replicate. The visual presence of the E30 M3 is undeniable, yet it is often misunderstood. To the casual observer, it appears to be a standard coupe fitted with aggressive fenders. However, this silhouette was not the result of a stylist's sketch. It was a strict adherence to the principle that form must follow function. When the engineers examined the standard body of the 3 Series, they did not see a canvas for decoration. They saw aerodynamic inefficiency. To correct this, they carried out a reconstruction so extensive that it effectively created a new car. It is a detail often cited, but rarely fully appreciated, that the M3 shares almost no body panels with the standard model. Only the hood and the roof panel remained unchanged. Every other surface was reshaped, not for vanity, but for velocity. The most significant alteration occurred at the rear. The standard 3 Series featured a steep rear window that created a pocket of turbulence over the trunk. For a street car, this was irrelevant. For a race car using a rear wing, it was a disaster. The turbulent air meant the wing would not receive clean airflow. To solve this, the engineers redesigned the entire rear structure, flattening the angle of the rear glass and widening the C-pillar. This change directed clean air straight to the spoiler, generating actual downforce rather than just drag. This pursuit of aerodynamic efficiency extended to the glass itself. On standard production cars of the era, windshields were held in place by thick rubber seals. Those seals, practical for assembly and repair, created small ridges that disturbed the air. On the M3, the engineers chose to bond the front and rear glass directly to the body frame. That technique was common in aerospace and high-end sports cars, but rare in sedans. It smoothed the airflow, and more importantly, it increased the torsional rigidity of the chassis. The glass became a structural component, stiffening the shell against the forces of high-speed cornering. Then there was the relentless hunt for weight reduction. If you were to lift the trunk lid of an E30 M3, the lightness would be startling. It feels almost fragile. That is because the trunk lid, along with the front and rear bumpers, the side skirts, and the rear wing, were manufactured from lightweight plastic composites. In a luxury market defined by the heavy, reassuring thud of steel doors, BMW deliberately chose materials that felt less substantial to the touch, but were superior in performance. The rear wing itself was not a piece of jewelry. It was a functional device that balanced the lift generated at the front axle, keeping the car planted at speeds approaching 150 miles per hour. The cost of these modifications was exorbitant. To retool a production line to stamp new fenders, bond glass, and mold custom plastic parts for a run of only 5,000 cars was financial madness by conventional standards. A modern accountant would have insisted on a simple spoiler and a badge. But the luxury of the E30 M3 lies in the fact that the accountants did not win. The money was spent on invisible improvements that only the wind tunnel could see. This obsessive focus on the exterior shell created a protective envelope for the operator. As we move from the aerodynamic exterior to the cabin, we find that the philosophy of functional luxury continues. The interior was not designed to pamper the driver, but to connect them to the machine. To open the door of an E30 M3 is to enter a space that prioritizes information over isolation. Modern luxury interiors are often designed to resemble a lounge or a home theater, places where the outside world is excluded. The cabin of this machine was designed as a workshop for the serious business of driving. It is a masterclass in ergonomics, a word that has lost its meaning in an age of touchscreens and submenus. Here, everything falls to hand with a logic that requires no explanation. It is a stark reminder that the greatest luxury in a performance car is not the quality of the leather, but the clarity of the connection between the human and the machine. The relationship begins with the seats. The driver drops into heavily bolstered Recaro buckets. These are not overstuffed armchairs. They are firm structures designed to clamp the torso against lateral forces. By holding the driver rigidly, they allow the arms and legs to remain relaxed and precise, rather than bracing against the door panel. The connection to the chassis is immediate. You feel the texture of the asphalt through the base of the seat before the suspension has even finished reacting to a bump. Once settled, the view forward reveals a philosophy of transparency that has vanished from automotive design. The dashboard wraps around the driver, angling the center console toward the left seat. This creates a distinct cockpit feel, separating the pilot from the passenger. The instrument cluster is a model of analog perfection. Crisp white numerals sit against a black background, swept by bright red needles. But the true statement of intent is found at the bottom of the tachometer. On a standard 3 Series of this era, BMW installed an econometer, a vacuum-operated gauge that swung wildly to show fuel consumption in real time. It was a device designed to encourage efficiency. In the M3, the engineers deleted this feature entirely. In its place, they installed an oil temperature gauge. This simple substitution speaks volumes about the car's purpose. It tells the driver that the thermal health of the engine is far more critical than the cost of the fuel being burned. It assumes the operator understands that a cold engine must be respected, and a hot engine is ready to be exercised. It treats the driver as a knowledgeable partner rather than a consumer. The tactile experience of the controls reinforces this partnership. The steering wheel is a simple 3-spoke design wrapped in leather, with a rim thickness that feels substantial without being clumsy. There are no buttons for the radio, no scroll wheels for a digital display, and no paddles for a transmission. The rim is purely for steering. The gear lever, rising from the center tunnel, offers a mechanical resistance that modern cable-operated shifters struggle to replicate. Every switch in the cabin, from the hazard lights to the window controls, operates with a satisfying, heavy click. These are components built to last for decades, providing a sense of permanence that capacitive touch buttons can never achieve. Visibility is another lost luxury. With thin pillars and a low belt line, the E30 offers nearly 360 degrees of unobstructed sightlines. You can see the front corners of the hood and exactly where the trunk ends. This spatial awareness allows you to place the car with millimeter precision, replacing anxiety with confidence. Yet, for all its focus, the M3 was not a Spartan punishment. It maintained a level of civility that proved performance did not require poverty. It came equipped with air conditioning, power windows, a sunroof, and a high-quality cassette stereo. The engineers understood that a distracted or uncomfortable driver is a slow driver. By providing these amenities, they ensured that the operator could focus entirely on the task at hand. The luxury of the E30 M3 interior is the luxury of focus. It filters out the noise of the world and amplifies the feedback from the road. It is a silent promise that if you do your part, the car will do its part. This static promise of connection sets the stage for the dynamic legacy the car would leave behind. But this promise of connection was not just theoretical. When the car entered competition, it proved something that modern performance engineering still has not figured out: that limitation breeds mastery. The validation of this obsessive engineering was immediate and absolute. When the M3 entered the World Touring Car Championship in 1987, it did not merely participate, it conquered. Roberto Ravaglia drove the car to the championship title in its very first season of competition. This victory sent a shockwave through the industry. It proved that a light, four-cylinder car could defeat larger, more powerful rivals through sheer balance and reliability. The ensuing battles in the German Touring Car Championship, called DTM, became the stuff of legend. The rivalry with the Mercedes-Benz 190E2.316 was fierce. It was a golden era where two automotive giants fought for supremacy, not with advertising slogans, but with mechanical innovation on the racetrack. This competition forced BMW to sharpen the M3 even further, leading to the Sport Evolution models. These final iterations featured larger 2.5-liter engines, adjustable aerodynamic splitters, and thinner glass. They were the ultimate expression of the platform, built in numbers just large enough to satisfy the rulebook. They represented the peak of the analog era, a moment when the engineers were still winning the argument against the accountants. But as the 1990s dawned, the wind changed. The arrival of the next generation, the E36, marked a significant pivot in philosophy. The new car returned to the smooth six-cylinder engine. It was more powerful, more comfortable, and significantly faster in a straight line, but it was also heavier. It was more insulated. The raw, vibrating connection of the E30 was replaced by a layer of refinement. The industry had decided that the customer wanted speed without the sacrifice. They wanted performance without the noise. This trend has continued unchecked for 30 years. Today, a modern performance sedan is a technological marvel that can lap a circuit seconds faster. Traction control makes average drivers look like heroes, and active suspension irons out every imperfection. But in gaining capability, we have lost sensation. Modern steering is electric and numb. The sound is synthesized. The speed is deceptive rather than visceral. The E30 M3 has become a lost standard because it represents the last time a manufacturer trusted the driver completely. It did not try to predict your mistakes. It did not try to flatter your ego. It simply did exactly what you told it to do, instantly and without question. The value of the car today does not come from its 0 to 60 time, which is now matched by efficient diesel hatchbacks. Its value comes from honesty. It is a machine that requires effort to drive fast, and that effort creates a bond that no algorithm can replicate. It is a contrast that becomes more painful with every passing year. We have traded the mechanical click of a throttle linkage for the digital signal of a sensor. We have traded the distinct howl of an intake plenum for the artificial rumble of a sound symposer. The E30 M3 stands as a critique of the modern definition of progress, asking quietly if we really moved forward, or if we just moved away from what mattered. It reminds us that the greatest luxury a car can offer is not a massage seat or a gesture control system. It is the feeling of the front tires loading up in a corner. It is the vibration of the gear stick in your palm. It is the absolute certainty that you are the one in control. This is the standard that was set in 1986, and it is the standard that we have been slowly drifting away from ever since. The question is not whether modern cars are faster or safer. The question is whether we have confused progress with convenience, and whether that trade was worth making. The BMW E30 M3 remains a singular benchmark for driver engagement that may never be repeated. It redefined luxury not as material excess, but as the purity of engineering execution. While cars have become faster and safer, they have rarely become better in the ways that truly stir the soul. If you want to understand where the road was lost, look no further. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of mechanical history.